What do you mean we spent 16 grand on safety fines last quarter? Zayden Fletcher's voice echoed through the glass walls of his corner office. His CFO shifted uncomfortably. 3 separate visits from OSHA. 2 were minor violations, but the main hit came from the welding floor at Site 4. Improper gear use, overexposure to heat, and Zayden raised a hand. I get it. He stared at the file. The company, his father's legacy, had grown into 10 bustling welding and fabrication sites across the Midwest. Since inheriting it 3 years ago, Zayden had focused on expanding contracts and upgrading equipment. But he hadn't stepped foot on a factory floor in over a year, and clearly something was slipping. He leaned back in his chair, jaw clenched. The reports, the numbers, the polished presentations, they weren't showing him the full picture. He needed to see it for himself. That's how, 2 days later, Jake walked into Site 4 in northern Indiana, steel toe boots, worn jeans, a plain hoodie, and a fake ID badge clipped to his chest. His beard was scruffier than usual, and his usually sharp haircut had been traded for a buzzed, uneven trim. It had been easy to pull off. Site 4 wasn't one of the flagship locations. Most of the staff had never seen him in person. And the site manager, a guy named Rick, had only been hired last fall and had never met Zayden. Rick greeted him with a clipboard and zero interest. "You're the new guy from Temp?" Rick asked without looking up. "Yeah, Jake Foster." Rick scribbled something. "We're short-staffed, so don't expect a warm welcome. Just do what Foreman Clay tells you and stay out of the way." Zayden followed him through the warehouse, hundreds of pounds of steel stacked on rolling racks, sparks flying from welders, the clatter of metal on concrete. The place should have been humming with coordination, but something felt off. Guys were working without goggles. One station had no fireproof curtain, and the air stale and thick. No visible ventilation fans running. Rick pointed toward a heavyset man barking orders near a welding rig. "That's Clay. You'll be on his team." Zayden walked over, introduced himself, and Clay barely glanced at him. "Foster, you weld?" "A little." "Fine, you're on cleanup till I say otherwise. Grab that broom." Zayden nodded and got to work. For the first few hours, he swept metal shavings and cleared debris from under the stations. He kept his head down but his eyes open. Workers looked tired, overworked. One guy, no older than 19, was welding without gloves. Zayden stepped closer. "You got gloves, man." The kid wiped sweat from his forehead. "Clay said he's out, told me to suck it up." Zayden's stomach turned. Later that day, a new hire, barely 18, was being shown how to arc weld. He looked nervous, hands shaking slightly as he tried to strike the arc. No helmet. No jacket, just a thin hoodie and clear goggles. "Wait, you're not wearing," Zayden started. Clay snapped. "He's fine, we're behind. If he can't handle a little heat, he's in the wrong place." Zayden froze. The kid flinched as sparks flew dangerously close to his arm. That was it. Zayden dropped the broom and stepped forward. "You can't put him out there like that. He doesn't even have a jacket." Clay turned, annoyed. "You got a problem, Jake?" "Yeah, I've got a big one." Zayden pulled off the hoodie and unzipped the fake ID badge from his chest. The room stilled as he reached into his back pocket and pulled out his real wallet. He held up his actual company badge. "I'm Zayden Fletcher. I own this company, and you're endangering my workers." Clay's face went pale. All around them, the workers froze. One guy dropped his welding torch. Another took a slow step back. Rick came rushing in from the office. "What the hell's going on?" Zayden didn't blink. "I've seen enough. You've got people working without basic gear, no oversight, no ventilation." "This isn't a shop, it's a lawsuit waiting to happen," Rick sputtered. "It's not that bad, don't." Zayden cut him off. "I've seen it, I was here all day." Clay tried to defend himself. "We're short on equipment, orders got delayed." "I can't slow down production every time someone forgets their gloves." Zayden stepped closer. "You didn't forget. You told them to keep going. That kid could have lost his vision. You put speed over safety." Clay's shoulders slumped. Zayden looked around at the workers, most of them watching in stunned silence. The young guy without gloves looked at the floor, unsure what to do. Zayden turned to him. What's your name? Illy, Zayden nodded. You did nothing wrong, Illy. You followed orders. That's on us. Then he faced the crew. I'm shutting this shop down for 48 hours. Everyone's getting paid. We're bringing in safety inspectors, new gear, and doing a full reset. Anyone who's been injured or ignored, talk to me privately. Your words matter now. Clay opened his mouth again. You're done, Zayden said flatly. Get your stuff. You're off the floor permanently. The tension in the room was thick, but behind it something else was rising: relief, maybe even hope. By the time Zayden returned to site for the next morning, the parking lot was half empty. Word had gotten out. Some workers had called in, unsure what the shutdown meant. Others lingered near their cars, eyeing the building like it might collapse under the weight of long, ignored problems. He stepped out of a plain rental truck, dressed in work boots and a dark jacket. No disguise this time. A man with a clipboard and glasses was waiting by the entrance. He looked up from his notes. You're Zayden? That's right, you must be DeMarco. Yeah, safety compliance out of Milwaukee. Your assistant overnighted me. The internal reports will run a full audit. Zayden nodded. Start with the main floor. I want an honest read, no filters. DeMarco didn't waste time. He walked in with two assistants, already noting the fire extinguisher placement and ventilation units. Zayden followed him into the break room, where 4 workers sat around a scarred table covered in old coffee cups and a box of powdered donuts. They looked up, tense. Where's Clay? Asked one of them, a tall man with a faded tattoo on his forearm. He's gone, said Zayden. And he's not coming back. The room was quiet. One of the younger guys leaned forward. So what happens now? You tell me what's been happening, said Zayden. All of it. They exchanged glances. No one spoke. A woman with a welding helmet in her lap finally broke the silence. You're not recording this? No, she looked him dead in the eye. Then I'll say it straight. Nobody here's been trained properly in over a year. They shove new hires on the floor with a YouTube clip and a prayer. If you complain, they cut your hours or start assigning you to the worst shifts. Zayden didn't interrupt. The man with the tattoo added, and if you bring up injuries, Rick tells you to walk it off, or he says he'll find someone else who won't whine. The youngest at the table, a short guy with a nervous energy, rubbed his hands together. I saw a guy take a hot metal shard to the leg 3 weeks ago. Bled through his jeans. Rick told him to change clothes and finish the shift. Zayden's jaw tightened. What was his name? Roman, said the man with the tattoo. He quit the next day. Zayden exhaled slowly. Anyone else willing to talk? A few nodded. Others hesitated. I'll be here all day, he said. Break room, floor, lunch hour. If you've got something to say, I'll listen, and I won't forget it. He left them there and walked deeper into the shop, past rows of idle machinery. The silence made every detail impossible to ignore: the warped floor tiles near the plasma cutter, the cracked face shield hanging from a peg, the absence of any posted safety procedures. DeMarco caught up with him near the north wall. No respirators anywhere. Welders are inhaling metal fumes raw. What's the exposure risk? Depends how long they've been doing it. Could be nerve damage, could be worse. Zayden stared at the wall. Fix it. Full gear, full filtration. I don't care what it costs. DeMarco nodded and moved on. Later that morning, Zayden stood at one of the stations with Ali, the kid who'd been forced to weld without gloves the day before. He was sitting on a stool, staring at his hands. They burn? Zayden asked. Just stung last night. Better now. You shouldn't have been within 10 feet of that rig. Illy looked up. I didn't think I had a choice. You didn't, and that's the problem? There was a long pause. I want to learn, Illy said finally. I'm not scared of hard work. But I don't want to get hurt doing it. Zayden nodded. You won't, not under my watch. Illy hesitated. Clay used to tell us that if we went too slow, we'd lose our bonuses, so everyone cut corners. What bonuses? Rick had this deal. If we hit certain numbers, we'd get $100 extra. But only if we didn't have any complaints or delays, so if someone got injured or reported something, we all lost it. Zayden felt his stomach turn. That ends today. He walked straight to the site office. Rick was at the desk, pretending to review a stack of incident logs. He looked up when the door opened, morning. Zayden closed the door behind him. "Don't bother," Rick stood slowly. "I've been going over the numbers. Most of the issues seem like misunderstandings. You know how workers exaggerate when they're mad." Zayden didn't respond. He walked to the desk, picked up the top sheet and read silently. "You logged Roman's injury as equipment misplacement. He needed 6 stitches. Rick fidgeted. "I didn't want to mark it as a lost time injury. It messes with our insurance rating. You've been threatening workers with lost bonuses if they report injuries." Rick shrugged. "It's an incentive, keeps people focused. You're manipulating people into risking their safety to protect your record." Rick leaned back. "That's how the game works. You keep your floor quiet, your numbers clean, and corporate stays happy." Zayden stepped closer. "Let me be clear, you're fired, effective immediately. Your badge won't get you back in this building." Rick's face went rigid. "You're making a mistake. These guys need pressure." "If you let them slack," Zayden didn't raise his voice. "Get out." Rick hesitated a moment longer, then grabbed his jacket from the back of the chair and walked out without another word. By early afternoon, Zayden had gathered the remaining staff in the main loading bay. The machinery was still silent. He stood on an overturned crate facing the crew. "I know the last 24 hours have been a shock. I'm not going to pretend this is easy, but I'm not here to save face. I'm here to fix what I broke by not paying attention." No one moved. "A few of you told me things today that I can't ignore. You trusted me with the truth. And in return, I'm going to rebuild this place with people who care about doing it right." He pointed toward the equipment racks. "New gear is on the way. Respirators, gloves, jackets, shields, everything you should have had from day one. We're bringing in certified trainers next week. Every worker here will be retrained at full pay, and no more production bonuses tied to silence. If you see something wrong, you report it. Period." "That's how we protect each other." A few heads nodded. "I'm also bringing in a new site foreman," he added. "Her name's Nadine. She ran our Fort Wayne location for 6 years without a single safety citation. She knows what real leadership looks like." He stepped down from the crate. "Until then, I'll be here, on the floor, with you." The crew didn't cheer, they didn't clap. But for the first time all day, someone stepped forward. It was the woman from the break room. She offered her welding helmet. "You'll need one, boss." Zayden took it with a quiet nod. "Then let's get to work." The next morning, the shop lights flickered on just before 6. The air was cooler. New ventilation fans had been installed overnight, humming quietly overhead. A stack of sealed crates sat near the entrance, each labeled with gear inventory. Flame-resistant jackets, gloves, helmets, and filtered respirators. 2 workers from a nearby site had been temporarily reassigned to assist with the safety rollout, and a trainer from the equipment vendor was already walking the floor, prepping for a hands-on session. Zayden stood near the central rig, running his fingers along the newly bolted safety shield. His jacket still bore the faint smell of metal dust from the day before. He hadn't slept much, but he didn't care. "Morning," came a voice behind him. He turned. Nadine was walking in, her stride steady, eyes scanning the floor like she'd been here a year instead of 20 minutes. "Trainers are setting up," she said, pulling on her gloves. "I'll walk the floor with them, make sure people are paired up right. Some of these folks clearly weren't taught how to handle half this gear." "They weren't," Zayden said. "I want them to feel like this is a restart, not a punishment." Her gaze didn't leave the equipment. "They'll feel that when they see it's consistent," he nodded. "Clay's office is cleared out, Rick's desk too. Any gaps in supervision, you let me know." "I'm not going anywhere." Nadine paused, then looked him in the eye. "Don't just be here, be seen doing something. They've had enough of people watching from windows." She turned and walked off. By 8, the first training session was underway. Half the crew paired off to practice fitting their new respirators. Others were led through a workshop on safe arc welding positioning. Zayden joined a group near the back, adjusting the fit on his own helmet while the trainer explained thermal runaway risks. Between sessions, he stepped into the tool room. Raoul, one of the older workers, was inspecting a drawer full of replacement tips. He looked over without surprise. "Didn't think I'd see the day," Raoul said. "New gear, someone actually explaining shield angles. Thought maybe I'd retire before that happened." "I should have been here sooner," Zayden said. Raoul shrugged. "You're here now, just don't let it slide again. Most of us don't ask for much. Just want to go home with all our fingers attached." Zayden opened a cabinet door and found a rusted grounding clamp inside. "This still being used?" Raoul shook his head. "Not since last winter. Should have been tossed, but Rick said we'd make do." Zayden tossed it into a scrap bin. "We won't make do anymore, not with safety." A few feet away, Eli was struggling with the tension knob on his new helmet. Zayden walked over. "Need help?" "I thought I had it. Keeps slipping." Zayden adjusted it manually, locking it into place. "Try now." Eli flipped the visor down and gave a small nod. "Better." Zayden stepped back. "You've got a good eye. Once you've finished training, I want you shadowing Nadine for a few days, learn how a floor's supposed to run." Eli glanced over, surprised. "Me, you want to learn?" "That's the only qualification that matters right now." From across the floor, a raised voice called out. "Hey, this one's still cracked." Zayden turned. A younger woman with braided hair held up a welding shield with a visible fracture across the lens. The trainer walked over, inspecting it with a frown. "Shouldn't have gotten through QC, we'll swap it." Zayden walked over. "What's your name?" "Shauna." "You worked under Rick," she nodded. "Mostly nights. Anything you want to tell me about how things ran?" Shauna looked down at the cracked shield. "We weren't supposed to speak up. He'd use the same joke every time someone got burned. You want hazard pay, go work in a war zone." Zayden's jaw tightened. She looked up. "You really gonna keep this up, or is this just a show?" "I don't do shows," Zayden said. "If you see something wrong, tell Nadine or me directly. No more middlemen." Shauna nodded slowly, then turned back to the trainer. Later that afternoon, Zayden stepped out back for a breath of air. The dumpsters had been cleared, old broken racks, cracked visors, and rusted clamps tossed and replaced. A small group stood near the loading dock, finishing lunch. He walked over, noticing a new face among them. "Didn't realize we had someone else starting," he said. The man looked up, mid-30s tall, with a dark green duffel slung near his feet. His shirt bore the logo of a subcontractor Zayden recognized. "Name's Marcus. Came in from Fort Wayne. Nadine asked me to help get the backline stations up to code." Zayden offered a handshake. "Appreciate the help. You worked with her long?" 5 years. "She doesn't cut corners. If I'm here, it's because she trusts you're serious." Zayden nodded. "She's not wrong." Marcus looked off toward the bay doors. "Some of these folks look like they've been through hell." One guy flinched when I asked him to double-check a harness, like he thought I'd yell at him. "We don't yell here anymore," Zayden said. "We train, we correct, and we protect." Marcus nodded. "Then we'll get it right." Inside, Nadine was reviewing the incident log from the past year, red pen in hand. Zayden stepped in and closed the door behind him. "Find anything I need to see?" She looked up. 3 entries flagged as equipment mishandling that were clearly injuries. One involved a fall, no follow-up, no safety review, just a line that said worker returned to task. He took the paper and scanned it. "What's the name?" "Amber Torres, not on the active roster, probably left." "I'll find out where she went." Nadine leaned back. "That's not the worst part. Some of these logs were altered. I can see the overwrite marks. Someone was covering for Rick." Zayden's face hardened. "Who?" "Initials match a floor lead. Martin Geller." Zayden didn't recognize the name. "He on shift today, scheduled for nights. He's a holdover from before Clay. Quiet type, but if he's falsifying reports." She trailed off. Zayden made a call to HR. 20 minutes later, he was standing near the north entrance when Geller walked in. A quiet man, lean build, sleeves rolled, hands calloused. "Martin," Zayden said, "we need to talk." Geller looked up, wary. They stepped into an empty office. Zayden closed the door. "Your initials are on 3 altered incident logs," he said plainly. "I want to hear your side." Geller hesitated. "Rick told me to fix the mistakes." Said it was paperwork, nothing more. Did you know people were getting hurt? Not always. Sometimes I heard a name, saw a bandage, but Rick told me it was handled and I didn't want to lose the job. You changed injury reports, that's not a clerical error. That's negligence. Geller swallowed hard. I didn't know what else to do. He said if I didn't sign off, he'd cut me from the lead list. I've got twins. Zayden looked at him for a long moment. You made a choice, and it cost people. If you'd come forward, we might have stopped this sooner. I know. You're done here, Zayden said. Effective immediately. Geller didn't argue. He just nodded once and left without another word. Back on the floor, Nadine was wrapping up a final training session. The crew looked focused, tired, but more in control. The tools were organized. The safety gear hung where it should. Zayden stood near the rig where he was now running a test weld under the trainer's supervision. The arc flared, then steadied. Clean, even, safe. Nadine walked over. First time I've seen this place quiet for the right reasons. Zayden watched till he finished the weld and stepped back, the trainer nodding in approval. Quiet is good, he said. Means we're listening. Finally. By the end of the week, Site 4 had shifted into a quiet rhythm. No one rushed. No one barked orders. The hum of machinery was steady, deliberate, not perfect but controlled. Zayden stood near the edge of the welding bay, clipboard in hand, making final notes for a follow-up audit scheduled for the following Monday. After the shake-ups, the crew had shrunk by 4. But instead of hiring replacements outright, Nadine was rotating in floaters from other sites people she trusted to model steady habits. It made for slower output, but it gave the remaining workers something they hadn't had in months: room to breathe. Zayden looked up as a man in a brown cap approached him. He recognized him as Deshan, one of the mid-shift grinders. They hadn't spoken yet. You got a minute? Deshan asked. Zayden nodded. What's on your mind? Deshan scratched the back of his neck. I wanted to clear something up. Couple weeks ago, I threw out a batch of clamps. They were bent. Rick found out and chewed me out in front of everyone, said I was wasting supplies. Zayden narrowed his eyes slightly. Go on. I didn't say anything then, but I kept a few of the clamps. They're still in my locker. Figured if anyone ever asked, I could show why I tossed them. Show me. They walked across the floor to the locker wall. Deshan pulled a small box from the top shelf and opened it. Inside were 3 clamps, each visibly warped, one with a hairline crack near the hinge. Zayden examined them one at a time. You did the right thing. I didn't want it to be a mark against me. I've been here 4 years, never had a write-up, but after that blow-up I stopped speaking up. Well, that stops today, Zayden said. I'll make sure this gets noted properly. And I want you helping with part inspections going forward. Deshan blinked. Seriously, you've got the eye for it. And you didn't throw these out quietly, you kept proof. That's accountability. Deshan nodded, visibly relieved, and returned to his station. As Zayden headed back toward the equipment racks, he noticed Shauna and Marcus reviewing a new shipment of materials. She was holding a chart, pointing out inconsistencies in the supplier ID numbers. These don't match the ones on the invoice, she said. Marcus leaned in. Could be a labeling error, or a switch, she replied. Zayden stepped closer. Something wrong, Shauna turned to him. We've got 10 rods labeled from a supplier we stopped using last quarter. Marcus said we've already had some issues with brittleness on this line. Zayden held out his hand. She passed him the inventory sheet. I'll call procurement, he said. If someone's recycling old stock through new shipments, we're going to find out. Marcus nodded. Want me to pull the full batch, quarantine it? I want everything tagged and off the floor by end of shift. They got to work immediately. Inside the administrative office, Zayden picked up the landline and dialed procurement directly. The voice on the other end sounded surprised to hear from him personally. Check all recent deliveries to Site 4, Zayden said. Look for any overlap with discontinued vendors. I want names, dates, and who signed off. Understood, I'll start pulling the files. And if there's anything that looks off, anything, flag it and call me directly. No emails. He hung up and turned to the whiteboard Nadine had set up beside the window. It listed each station, each worker and their assigned tasks for the next 2 weeks color-coded with notes on training status and equipment needs. He added a note beneath it. Rotate Shauna into materials review. When he stepped back onto the floor, Ali was assisting a new hire named Kenny, showing him how to check the pressure gauge on the oxyacetylene tank. Nadine stood a few feet away, arms crossed, watching silently. Zayden walked over. "How's he doing?" Nadine didn't look over. "Better than I expected. He's patient. Doesn't just do it for them, he explains why it matters. I want him in the level 2 training cycle. He's ready." Kenny adjusted the regulator slowly, glancing at Ali for confirmation. Ali gave a small nod. Kenny smiled just a flicker and went back to his work. Zayden turned to Nadine. "You think we can hire a couple more at this pace?" "Not yet," she said. "We've stabilized, but not enough to onboard right. Let the culture reset first." He nodded. Agreed. They walked the perimeter together, inspecting the freshly marked safety lines and newly installed signage. Near the back wall, a stack of old paperwork sat in a plastic bin: incident logs, outdated shift reports, and forms Rick had never submitted. Zayden picked up a sheet marked April 3rd equipment failure. It was blank beneath the header. "None of this was real," he said. "Just filler, or worse," Nadine added. "A smoke screen." He dropped the sheet in the shred bin and moved on. They paused near the break area. It had been cleaned up, a new fridge installed, with a supply of bottled water and basic first aid kits mounted on the wall. Zayden turned to her. "I want to schedule a town hall, just this site after hours, casual. I'll bring food. You think they'll show up? They need to see me when I'm not issuing orders. They need to know I'm not leaving again." She studied him a moment. "Then bring enough for everyone." Later that evening, folding tables were set up near the loading dock. Sandwich trays, canned drinks, and a few folding chairs made up the humble spread. The crew filtered in slowly, unsure what to expect. No speeches, no agenda, just a quiet gathering. Zayden sat among them. He didn't lead. He listened. Raoul told a story about how the old layout had forced him to carry metal sheets across a loose grate, something he'd tripped on more than once. Shauna mentioned a time she had to swap out a torch mid-shift because the previous one had a faulty valve, and the supervisor told her to just hold it tighter. Deshan explained that he'd once drawn up a better rotation schedule on his own time, only to be dismissed with a laugh. No one interrupted, no one raised their voice, and when it was Zayden's turn to speak, he didn't stand. He didn't reach for a notepad, he just looked around the circle. "I built this company to be something I could be proud of," he said. "But somewhere along the way, I started trusting numbers more than I trusted people. I thought if the reports looked clean, the shop must be running right." He paused. "I was wrong." He looked toward Ali, then to Shauna, then the others. "You've all been carrying this company on your backs while the people meant to support you let you down. That ends here." No one applauded. They just absorbed it. Afterward, a few people lingered. Quiet conversations formed in corners. Shauna and Marcus reviewed a training manual together. Raoul offered to help patch the floor near the backline station over the weekend. Deshan asked if he could redraw the rotation schedule and submit it again. Zayden left last. He turned off the lights himself. The following Monday, a new shipment arrived, this time from verified vendors. The defective rods were returned and flagged with a formal complaint. Procurement confirmed that the prior shipment had been quietly redirected by a junior staffer trying to cut costs. That employee was terminated the same day. By the end of the month, Site 4 was operating at 80% capacity, slower than before, but with 0 reported injuries, a clean air quality test, and a fully trained crew. Zayden didn't return to his high-rise office. He moved into a modest satellite room at the site, no windows, no view. Just a desk, a chair, and a line of sight to the floor. The walls bore no titles, no plaques, only a corkboard pinned with names. Each one belonged to someone who'd stayed, someone who'd spoken up, someone who hadn't quit when things got hard, and over time the board grew.